My name's Cyndi Masters. I'm an alcoholic. And because of the grace of God, some simple actions in this program and both sides of sponsorship, I've been sober every single day in a row since December the 17th, 1985. And for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful. It's a big, big deal in my life. I have a big life and I just can't even believe that I get to have this life. And it's all because of that day and a surrender that took place to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. So a half an hour is very little time to talk about 8 and 9. 8 and 9 are big steps. And so I'm going to synopsisize really quickly step 8 and probably spend a little more time storytelling on step 9. So step 8, it says in the big book that we have a list that we made it when we took our 4th step. And that's true between the resentment, the fear, and the sex inventory. And, you know, between those 3 inventories, almost everybody gets covered. But the thing that I encourage everyone to do while they're writing out their step list is to get real still inside and see, is there anybody that's not on this list that I'd rather not run into? Is there anybody on this list that when I'm around them, I feel uncomfortable or that kind of sense of shame? And take a look at, because there are people that that did no harm to me. And I didn't recognize them in the fear inventory. If I got real nitty gritty, I probably had fear of them or seeing them in public, but I had too much really big stuff to get to the nitty gritty. So taking a look at that, and anybody that makes me uncomfortable, let me take a really good look at, did I set the ball in motion and do I have something to set right? So now I've got this list. Right. And I put it on note cards, each person. What's the harm I did? What's the harm I did? Because let's be really clear about what I need to make amends about. Right. And when I'm making these cards and when I'm looking at this, it has nothing to do with making the amend itself. Because what the step says is that you know, we pray to become willing, right? Become willing, not that we are automatically willing. So I categorize these into amends I'm willing to make right now. Usually those are the things that I'm 100% wrong on and that I just want to feel better about myself with, right? I really hurt you. I'm willing to make amends to you, right? And then they're the ones that I'm not quite ready, but I might be later. And those are the ones where probably both of us had a part in it. And then there are ones I don't think I'm ever willing to do. And those are where I definitely harmed you. And I can see where I harmed you, but maybe I think you harmed me more. That's usually the ones that go into I don't think I'll ever be willing to do this. But I still write out exactly what the harm is. I write the phone number and the address of the person on the back of that card, because it takes away my excuse when it's time to make the amend. And my experience is by the time I get through the right nows, you know, the things that I think I'll be ready for, I'm ready for. And by the time I get finished with those, by the middle part, then I'm ready for the end part. Now, understand, I've been sober a long time, decades, it's really wild. And so this experience has been very different every time I've done it. And I'm just in the process again. And because I've been doing a step study with a bunch of women, and this is the step that we're on. And so early on, you know, my 4th step was limited and therefore my 8th step was limited. You know, I could really only see the black and white wrongs. I couldn't, you know, I didn't have the depth. I didn't have the spiritual depth. And I didn't have the emotional maturity nor the security to be able to really look the way that I can now. And that's completely okay. That's why I've gotten to go back and do this many, many times. I did not make my last amends from my first 4th step, from my first 8th step list until I was 17 years sober. So I think that was appropriate too. That may surprise you. It wasn't because I procrastinated on doing it. It's because, and it wasn't even because I wasn't willing to become willing. It's because I was still too wounded and had not healed enough to completely forgive the person. And so I'll just get into some detail with this that I usually talk about when I talk about step 9. When I was a little kid, a lot of things happened. My dad kicked me through doors, broke my back. I got taken out by children's services. I wound up back in foster homes. I was adopted, wound up in orphanages. And he was certainly on my 4-step. And if I haven't forgiven somebody, it took me years to see my part. The only thing that I could see the first time that I did a 4-step was what I could see was just what he did to me. And yeah, I wasn't the daughter that he wanted me to be. That was as good as I could get to, like, what did I do wrong? Where was I responsible? Where was I at fault? You know, fast forward 17 years, I've had a motorcycle wreck. I've had a bunch of things happen. Now I'm falling and I can't get up. And so my back had been pushed forward, and I had a motorcycle wreck and I got drove over by a car while I was laying in the middle of the highway. And so it was a big deal. And so that was fine. But then I started to fall and couldn't get up, and it was related to my back having been broken when I was a kid. And then the accident exacerbated that break and pushed it forward. So they had to go in and cut part of my spinal canal out. And so that it would loosen my spinal cord and put hardware so it stopped pulling on it. I don't know how it all went, but it was a big, big surgery. And it triggered all of this old trauma. And it triggered this slideshow in my head of every time I'd ever taken a hit to my back. And I didn't know what to do with it. I'm 17 years sober. You know, I'm centered in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm trusting God, and now I'm traumatized. What do you do with that in recovery? And my sponsor said it's time to really do some forgiveness work. That did not sound like good news or a lot of hope at the time. If I would have known what forgiveness did for me, I would have jumped in a lot sooner. And I think I tried to forgive, but I think that we have to get enough unlayered so that we can get to that part that God can heal. And forgiveness for me took the hook out of my mouth. It didn't rewrite history. And I think that's what took me so long. I think I was afraid that it would rewrite history and it would invalidate my experience and it would invalidate what had happened to me. But it wasn't about any of that. It was about what this resentment did to me. It was about what because as long as I don't forgive, I keep a wound. And that wound interferes with my ability to participate fully and to become whole. You know, like I feel like today I am usefully whole. And it's quite miraculous that I got here. And the evidence that I did this forgiveness work wasn't just a feeling. It was that I went to him and I made amends for what I owed him amends for. And what did I owe him amends for? I owed him amends for blaming him for everything that went wrong in my life. I owed him amends for every time somebody started to say something good about him. I made sure they knew he wasn't. You know, that's what I owed him amends for. See, he wasn't responsible for my adult self. He wasn't responsible for me being triggered, you know, in my 30s. He wasn't responsible for any of that. That was my job. I was a grown-up. He was responsible for kicking me through doors when I was a kid. One of the things that helped me forgive him was, God, please help me see him through your eyes. How did he grow up? See, because I think one of the things, particularly with our parents, that we tend to do is we, at least I did, it's like they had a title, parent, you know, dynamic duo, whatever you want to call them. So it wasn't the same as I've sponsored women who have really hurt their children. And I have forgiven the women I sponsor. I've loved them unconditionally. I get it, but I couldn't see him as human and I couldn't let it go. And so I let it go and I made amends to him. And the reason I don't think I should have made it a day sooner is he had been confronted by a cousin of mine, because the cousin got traumatized watching my dad beat me with an extension cord on a camping trip. And this stuff, by the way, you guys, is not my alcoholism. My alcoholism is the way I drank. It's what drinking does to me when I drink. But what this is causes and conditions under the hood that if I don't resolve, I'm sure to drink again. And so whatever they are, whatever they are, I have to deal with them. And that's what starts to happen in 8 and 9. I don't deal with them in 4 and 5. I unearth them. And in 8 and 9, I begin to deal with them because I'm empowering myself with God's help, holding God's hand. I'm empowering myself to not live in that fear, to not live in that shame, facing it head on. But when I made amends to him, I did what I was taught, which is, hey, I know that I hurt you. I was wrong. I don't know what other ways I've hurt you. If I've harmed you in other ways I'm unaware of, I'd like to hear about it. And what else can I do to make this right? Which is how I've been taught to make an amends. And because he'd been confronted by this, he said, I don't remember doing this. And he didn't. My dad probably had dissociative disorder and he really didn't remember things. And he said, but if I did, he said, I'm just really sorry. And then he said, repeated what I said. And if there's anything else I've done to harm you, you can tell me now. Well, lock and load, baby. I've been waiting my whole life to tell him about what he did to me, right? My whole life. But because I was prayed up, because I'd forgiven him, because I came not to get something from him, I came to bring something to him. I was able to be loving and kind and do what I was supposed to do. And just what came out of my mouth was, that was a long time ago. I forgive you. How about we just go on and do the best that we can? And I think that's the key. That's why you have to wait until it's time. And that's why you need a sponsor's guidance and to really talk this through and not just jump in and go do things. If I had heard the same thing 10 years before, I would have been 7 years sober. If he'd said the same thing to me, I would have puked all over him, because I still hurt too much to be somebody with grace and dignity and see him with humanness. See, I had to be well enough. I didn't need anything from him anymore before I could make an amend to him. If we still need something from somebody, whether it's approval or help me heal something or validate me or anything, I don't believe I'm ready to make that amend, because I'm really going looking for something. An amend is really just about, how do I clean up my side of the street? How do I make this right? How do I make this right? Because when I make it right, I no longer am tormented. I lose a layer of shame. Lucky me. Hard things have been things that I've done in recovery that have hurt people. I've been in a lot of hospitals. I've had a traumatic brain injury sober. And there have been periods of time where I was not completely in control of my personhood. And I hurt people that loved me, and trying to sweep that up, but I have to. Just because there's a good excuse why I hurt you does not mean that I don't have to amend the fact that I did it. And I think that for years in drinking, I justified everything I did because you did this to me or they did that to me. And then when I finally go to make an amend, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing. It is strictly about, I would like to make things right with you. And that's a hard thing. I'm doing, even with like the women in this step study are mostly 20, 30 years sober. And I've had several of them jump the gun, even though we said, let's wait on this one. And, because we want relief. But when I'm making them into you for my relief, it's not as effective. When I make an amend to you to make something right, which is a different kind of relief, it's not to unburden myself of guilt and shame. It's to make it right so I can live with myself, and so that I stop having this chatterbox in my head. And as we move through and get closer to God, which this is where I think it really starts to happen, God does give us intuitive thought of when it's the right time. And we sit down with our sponsor and gets very specific direction. Like sometimes I've practiced what I'm going to say, and sometimes my girls practice with me exactly what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. I don't think anybody's that afraid of the 4th step or even the 5th step. I think many of us are afraid of 8 and 9, and they're the magical steps, because they're the empowerment. See, once I did that with my dad, I was no longer a little girl dealing with her daddy. I was now a grown woman dealing with a wounded man, because I could see him through God's eyes. I had matured enough to make a real amend. And what a miracle. And I will tell you now, fast forward, that's a long time ago, because I'm long time sober now. So that's been more than 20 years. And today my dad we had cancer last year, and I bought a house in Cincinnati to be close to him. See, because my amend doesn't stop, and I'm a demonstration to my dad of all the things that I don't think he ever got, which is why he couldn't give it to me. And so I bought a house near them in addition to Louisville, where I live most of the time. And I took him to chemo every other week. And, big deal. Let me tell you about my sister. So early on in the program, back in the 80s, my sister was the first real amend I made. My sister, I had protected my younger siblings. My sister got pregnant on purpose at 14 and had a baby, and was married by the time she was 15 to get out of the house. And she largely blamed me, and I wasn't allowed near her children. And she was mad at me, and she didn't know all the reasons why. She felt like I had abandoned her because I was her nurturer. And I knew that I had sometimes been very abrasive with her, and I knew that she was hurt because I had left. And I knew that my last drunk was on her birthday, right after she became pregnant. And I was in a jail cell, and you could just hear me screaming over the phone. And, I just ruined everything. And so I made amends to her, and I said, I know I've hurt you. I don't know all the ways I've hurt you. And I'm really sorry, and I understand you don't want me around your children, and I hope that someday you'll allow me to earn that privilege. And I just, without being judgmental about how can you hold me responsible, I was a little kid too, without no excuses, just I heard her, and that's all that mattered. And then I listened. And then for the first time, somebody validated. She broke down and cried and talked about being afraid of when was I going to die, watching my dad beat me, and then when I was in the streets. And she broke down and cried. And little by slowly, we built a relationship. And those nephews and I, they were little at the time. One of them is 42 now. And so I grew up getting to be aunt, and my sister now calls me mama sister. And she sends me a Mother's Day card, because my parents were not capable. My mother wasn't capable of nurturing. She just wasn't capable. And so my sister, when she'd have all those boys in her house, because she had 2 boys and a husband, she would come visit me when she needed nurtured. And I make her, it's a lifetime amend. It's not in a moment. It's in all the ways. Did I really mean it? And can I love you? And so I never have looked for anything back from her. My sister very hurt. She had a second husband, and her husband, she was a caregiver for 12 years, and he died last year. And I got to do his eulogy, but probably better yet, all that grief sent my sister to therapy, because she does not have alcoholism. And we started speaking the same language. And to be that trusted by somebody that wouldn't let you near their children, I can't tell you what that feels like, but it didn't happen because I went and made an amend. That was a beginning. That was a beginning. See, the truth is about amends, how it says that our life has to be about, it can't be about us anymore, right? It has to be a service basis. And I think some of us are very good at that with the coffee machine and with the newcomer. Well, the newcomer's easy peasy, but my sister and my mom and my dad and, these other people in my regular life, my employees, those things, they're forever. In other words, I don't just go apologize. That's a piece of it, because some of us never were willing to even say we're sorry. So I need to say, I'm really sorry that I hurt you, but also I'm willing to help make that right. And then I need to keep being willing to make it right. I have never kept score with my sister. I will always lose if I keep score. There is no even. There is no even. Ever. But you cannot give without getting. But if I'm giving so that I can get, if I give an amends so that you will give back to me, so that you will do anything with me, I will lose and you will lose. But if I give an amends because I want to make something right, and if I mean that, then I will keep attempting to make it right. And eventually these miracles happen, but they don't make an amend and have that happen. At least that's not my experience. My mom, I just hated her. Hated her. And it was much later, it was 2010. So I got sober in 85. I guess I was how long was I sober? 25 years in 2010. And my brother was murdered. And my mom, I blamed her because she could have stood up for us and she didn't. She didn't nurture us and she was selfish and I didn't understand. And even sober, I just didn't want anything to do with her. I didn't get it. And when my brother was murdered, I saw so much pain in my mother's face that for the first time, I knew that she didn't have a choice. I knew she was as trapped as anybody. She just didn't know how to make a different decision. She didn't have what it would take. And I saw her in so much pain. And I saw my dad tell her she had 2 weeks to grieve, and that was all. And I didn't know that she would hurt if one of us died. Like, I really didn't. And so for the first time at 25 years sober, I saw my mom as a human being. Because I think I had still wanted her to become different so she could help heal me. And I no longer needed her to become different to help heal me. I was pretty whole. And, I went to the hospital after that and I almost died. I got septic and I had a big colon surgery and I got septic, and she came, she's like, please don't die. I can't handle it. And I made a decision I was going to spend the rest of my life trying to help her have joy. And I have. So that was in 2010. We're in 2023. I took her to Africa with her sister the next year, took my sister, and I got to see her smile again. And, fast forward during COVID, and I did this really cool thing and got all of her friends around the world to make these little videos. That's hard with 80-year-olds. And, she was mad because it was COVID and it was her birthday and, she wanted a parade. And so I came and I surprised her with that. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother cry happy tears. I'd watched my mother cry tears, but I had never watched her cry happy tears. And so what a joy for me. I could not have even experienced or received that gift if I still needed something from her. See, if I still needed her to show up for me, but I have all of you, and you have shown up for me. Like after the wreck, I was so sick. It's been you guys. It's been you guys that have shown up, that have fed me, that have been with me, months in the hospital, multiple times. It's you guys. They can't do it. And when I could see them the same way as I see a newcomer, because I never fault a newcomer that doesn't have anything to give to me. You taught me well. You said, when I'm sponsoring or giving to somebody, my job is to give for fun and for free. and to expect nothing in return. And you know what? I start to do that with new people. And trust me, especially back in the day, I got the real crazies, because crazy tracks crazy. And so, you know, and it's like to let them blow me up and blow my house up and blow my phone up and be crazy and just love them. And just love them. And if they go drink 20 times, just love them, take them through the steps again. Thank you for the reminder. So now I start applying this to all these people that I have hurt. How do I just love them and people that have hurt me? Because again, the people that I stole from, easy, write a check. It's the easiest mend any of us will ever make. Even if it's $5 a month, because it's all we can afford, write the check. You know, easy peasy. Somebody I knocked the crap out of, easy peasy. Somebody that I stole their reputation, not so easy. Somebody that I stole their reputation and I felt justified in it and had to work through that delusion, because that's the problem. Can I get through the delusion of my justification? And then the people that did the most harm to me, and to be able to come full circle and fully forgive them and see them as human beings and approach them the same way I do you. I say, you are my family. And for people in my life, and there are several of my sponsees here, and there are several people that know me fairly well, I love big and I love unconditionally. And I show up and I keep showing up whether you behave or not. So that's not hard with you. And you've done that with me. We don't shoot our wounded. But can I do that with the people that hurt me the most? And I believe that it is when I could do that, that I finally really became whole. Not perfect, but whole. Not a walking wound anymore. I got my power back. Lack of power is our dilemma. It comes from God. But am I really using that with God? I hope I've made a lick of sense. It's a very short period of time. I have about 5 million more things I'd love to talk about with step 8 and 9. Ollie, thank you for having me. Thank you all for listening.
I'm my own qualifier. My name is Rick J. Great to see y'all. Happy to say that I've been a member of Al-Anon since the 10th day of April, 1987. All those years in a row. I never envisioned it to be that way. I certainly didn't want it to last that long when I came in, but hey, you started doing the deal, and this is what happened. Thanks, Jen, for the invitation. Thanks. This is wonderful. This is the second event I've been at, one in person, now on Zoom, where there's just been this real equal kind of participation by both angles on alcoholism, from the alcoholic and from the family side. So it's really a delightful thing to be a part of. Great to be included in your event. Thanks to those who have their video on. I don't know if anybody has shared on this thing, but I swear to God, after all these years, I could stand with my toes against the baseboard, my nose against the wall, and tell my story. But I can't tell you how unsatisfying that is until I connect with you, until I can see who you are. I need this to be an equal relationship, not one where I'm talking and it's just kind of like a commodity that you listen to like music. So I really encourage you to turn on the screen and participate with us all. It really just is so powerful for me to be able to do that and to have people do it along with me. Cyndi, thanks very much. I mean, if I smoked and need a cigarette, that was really pretty great. You said a lot of the things I'm going to say, so I can just I'll scratch all those off. I participated in one of these fellowship. I've been to a few of them live, a few of these fellowship in the spirit deals, but the very first one was in Colorado a number of years ago. And I remember the experience vividly in this equality of participation between the AA and Al-Anon, but the overriding memory is of how there was no prayer said from the beginning, from the first meeting to at the end of a meeting until Sunday, and that the entire weekend was seen as a prayer. And it's to this day remains with me as a long last and kind of an experience that I hold dear, that all of what we do is prayerful. So beautiful. I live just outside of Toronto, Ontario, in a lovely town called Oakville. west of west of Toronto, and just a little east of where Jen lives in Burlington. Going to see Jen on Friday morning. She's speaking at my wife's Al-Anon group, so I'm quite looking forward to coming in here and you and your daughter share. Delightful. Anyhow, step 8, made a list. We love making lists. I'm a list maker. Made a list of all the persons we had harmed and came willing to make amends to them all. We have this plethora of 12-step programs that have evolved in Al-Anon. I would say, the original program, AA and Al-Anon, is the original second program. We were the first ones to take these AA steps and use them for people who weren't alcoholic. But then, of course, it's exploded. So my favorite little gag line is, Shoppers Anonymous, and all the other ones have had to change words around and stuff like that. And so the easiest one, though, has been Shoppers Anonymous, where in step 8, they didn't have to change a word. They just had to move a letter. So instead of it saying became willing to make amends to them all, they just had to move a letter and say that became willing to make amends to the mall. And so here we go. In our book, From Survival to Recovery, one of my favorite lines in all of our literature says, when we willingly surrender to the spiritual discipline of the 12 steps, our lives will be transformed. I wasn't after transformation when I first came. I just wanted to get her back and I'd be okay. But as time went on, I really started to see that it was this transformation that I was after. And the transformation is so far beyond relief. I come here and I get some relief, and thank God I get blessed relief. I got blessed relief in the beginning, but I misinterpreted relief as the awakening. I didn't really do a lot of things. I just kind of hung out in fellowship, and I felt a little better, and I thought, okay, I'm having an awakening, and how wrong I was. It took me a long time before I was really willing to do the deep dive into what these actions tell us to do. And when we get to 8, when I got to 8, I don't know what happens when you got to 8, but when I got to 8, I was well and truly into transformation. So past relief, I could hardly see it. And that statement also says, when we willingly surrender to the spiritual discipline. Discipline's not a word you hear a lot now, and doesn't get a lot of airtime about the discipline of doing this. Gets a lot of airtime in Al-Anon is take what you like and leave the rest. Well, I'll tell you, if I had to live by take what I like and leave the rest, I'd be dead. Because that's how I got to Al-Anon, is by taking what I like and leaving the rest. What I have to do is kind of leave what I like and take the rest, is really what I have to do if I want to have that awakening that's promised to me in step 12. And Al-Anon, we get a lot of airtime on boundaries. Oh, I got to set my boundaries. Oh my God. It's nothing. It's just about relief, and it just it diverts me. It diverts me from the purpose. And then my qualifier. That's why I start myself out as saying I am my own qualifier. Because as soon as I start referring to other people as my qualifier, I'm putting a gigantic V for victim on my forehead and walking around with that. Were there alcoholics in my life? Yeah, there were. Are they the problem? No, they've never been the problem. I've been the problem in them, but it's so easy to get wrapped in what the problem is. So, but there's a reason that step 8 is 8. If this was 1, nobody'd come down on it. We don't put this out in our public information policies. Do you want your life to be transformed? Do you want to do all kinds of things you never wanted to do, to get things you never thought you wanted to have? We don't put that in our public information posters. But by the time we're at 8, that's where we're at. And I need to go to any length. And this is the length that I need to go. This is my definition of going to any length. I need to go to any length in my recovery that I was willing to go in my disease. That's my definition of any length. So if I asked anybody here who's in AA, was there anything that would stop you from getting a drink? Was there anything? Or would you go to absolutely any length, bar none? Or for me in Al-Anon, was there any length that I would stop at to get what I wanted, to control, to there was none. I would do whatever I had to do. And that's the length that I want to go. That's the approach, that's the attitude I want to bring to doing this, especially when we're making a list of all this stuff. And I got to become willing yet again. There's so much willingness happening throughout here. There's so much surrender happening through here. And this is yet another one. It's another surrender en route to that promise of the awakening in 12. I don't like doing any of these things. I don't like doing any of them, but I love, absolutely, totally love the results that have come to me by doing these things. And kind of like the pattern of doing amends that Cyndi described. We kind of start with doing some things, and the willingness to move forward is built upon the experience I have of doing things I didn't want to do. So I do simpler little things, and then, oh, that worked out pretty good. Oh my goodness, now I do something else, and hey, that worked out even better. Then I did something else, and then I got something I didn't even know I wanted. If all I ever got was what I wanted, I would have ripped myself off. The spiritual gifts continue to explode when I'm willing to do these things. And if you take a look at the Al-Anon, like me, and where we come in, because our qualification for membership is that there be a problem of alcoholism in a relative or friend. And I totally misinterpreted it to say there's a problem with a relative or friend who has alcoholism, because that's where the total focus was. And then we come to a step that says, made a list of all the people we had harmed. That is a 180, a complete total 180 from it's them that's the problem to, hey, look at who I was in this situation. It's a total 180 from being hurt by you to, oh my God, look at what hurt I have done. It's a complete 180 from the focus I had is that you are responsible for everything to taking responsibility for everything I did in every situation. That is a gigantic shift. And that shift, in my experience, can only happen when God is when I allow God in. And that comes from doing those first 7 things. And then here's the very, very next thing to do. I need to do that which I would not normally do or want to do. And that's what this is. I've never met a single person ever that says, hey, I think I'm going to go out and make amends to all these people. Never. It kind of doesn't fit into kind of the MO of our society or any other place. It's like, basically my MO is give me what I want. This is telling me to go out there and fess up. And so there's this little quote from our One Day at a Time book around step 8. It says, the central thought is willingness. The only action it calls for is to make the list and then become willing. Whom have I injured? Surely those closest to me. But then it says this, and listen to this with both ears. If this does not get any airplay in Al-Anon, but this is right in our book about step 8. Listen to this. The 8th step places us on the threshold of freedom from self-hate. Oh my God. But I hated you. Actual fact, it was the flip. Oh my God. It opens the door to new peace of mind, which, once enjoyed, we will never want to lose. And that certainly is my experience. It's that thing is self-hate, the threshold of removal from self-hate. Amazing. And then because there's AA participating, I can use the AA book. I love it when I'm at a meeting where I can do that. And it says this tiny little thing. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order. And isn't that true? That on the surface, and so much of this on the surface, it says one thing, underneath it, totally something else. Then what does the book say? But this is not an end in itself. I mean, there's more to it. Oh, it's not an end in itself. Our real purpose, isn't my real purpose just to get you to forgive me? Isn't my real purpose just to be okay? No. My real purpose is this, to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people around us. There it is. And that's where I really need to keep my focus. Al-Anon, you hear a lot of people talk about, you did my 8th step, put my name on the top of the list. I don't agree with that. I put my name in the title. This is Rick's 8th step, because every amend I made was an amend back to me. To get rid of the rot in the soul. And there was a rot in my soul. That's the self-hate thing. And I needed to start to get rid of it. So this is how it happened. I did my 4th step, like everybody else here talks about doing the 4th step. I had my list. I got to doing my 8th step. And my sponsor gave me a very specific way to do this. I kind of read about the 8th step in all my books, answer some questions, and I could take you to the very place where this happened to me. And I had that list of 4 that I'd gotten in 4, and I was doing all those readings, and that's like God reached down and said, Rick, just finish the list off. So I reread what I had done in 4, and I added some things. I added things that I had done, not what they had done to me, what I had done to those people. And I showed up. And I don't know what says, become willing to make amends to them all. I don't know how willing I was. But I can tell you this, I showed up. And I showed up to my sponsor's door, got on an airplane, flew down to see her. And I said, okay, here's the list. What are we going to do with this? Now, what my sponsor had done with me was when she started sponsoring me, I made the mistake of telling her the truth a few times, and she really jumped on me. And so one of the things I said was, I have this collection of little figurines, and I live in Canada. So in Canada, we have this day called Boxing Day. Those of you who live in the United States may have heard of Boxing Day. I've read everything I can about it to this day, still do not know the exact origin of why they call it Boxing Day, but it's Boxing Day. But really what it was go out to the stores and get stuff cheap day. That's really what Boxing Day used to be, not so much now, but that's what it was then. And so I collected these little figures. So I went to this on Boxing Day looking for a deal. So I went to the store, Jen, you'd remember it, called Bowring's gift store. And so I asked to see a little set of these things that I collected. And so their store was crazy with people. And so the woman brought me the little box of things and then went off to deal with somebody else. I opened the box, looked at the figures. They were perfect. I put them back in the box and I broke one. I busted it. The clerk came back to me and said, are they okay? I said, no, this one is broken. So she said, oh, okay, I'll go get you another one, which she did. And I walked into the store. Now we're trying to get our life in order. I make my call to my sponsor on a Monday night and told her that said, hey, look, this is what I did. She said, you did what? And she said, well, you need to make an amendment for that. And I said, well, I'm at that time, I was like on step 2. And I said, well, smart ass that I am. I said, that's step 9. I'm only in step 2. She said, listen, dummy, step 9 is for the wreckage of your past. This is the wreckage of your present. You will go make that amendment right now. Okay. Because when I had asked her to sponsor me, I told her I would do anything she asked me to do. And I meant it. Now I waited a week. I will tell you that. So I went on a Monday night, so like a week after Boxing Day, and I walk in the store, and by then the store is empty. And I'm there like at 8 o'clock at night, and there's 2 people standing there, and I have this little box figurines with me, and I thinking, okay, I'm not going to do this to 2 people. I'm just going to do it to 1. And so I said, hey, they asked, can I help you? And I said, well, yes. And I said, maybe you could come over here. So I say to this attendant in the store, this clerk in the store, I said, well, I was here on Boxing Day. I looked at these. I broke one. I told you that it was wrong, and you gave me another broken. Told you it was broken. You gave me another one, and I said this. I said, I'm now in a program where I'm trying to live my life a different way. And she kind of looked at me very strangely. And I said, I'd like to know if there's a way that I can make this right, because that's what I was told to do. I was not told, like our beautiful speaker just said, I was told not to just say, I'm sorry, but to say, how can I make that up to you? And so how could I make it up to you? In that case was, what can I do to make this right? And she looked at me and she didn't know what to do. And I said, well, perhaps the broken one is in the back and I can buy that. And so she went back, came back, said, no, it's not there. And I said, well, is there anything else I can do to make this right? And she said, well, maybe you can buy something else. And I did. And as I was walking out the store, it happened. That sense of, this is what they mean. When I do the things I don't want to do, I'm going to get results I didn't even know could happen. I floated out of there. I had, for the first time in my life, come clean about something I had done, as small as that was. It gave me the experience, the cleanliness that happens when I involve myself in spiritual action I would never do on my own. But when guided by these set of principles with a sponsor who I respect and love, I did, and that was the experience. And that stayed with me. So that when I got to do 9, I had and there was a few other things. She didn't let up. I mean, that wasn't just one of the things. There was a whole other list. Like, if we had time, we could go through them all, but we don't need to. That's really the key, the key point. And so I finally got to 9, did my 8. I got to 9, had my list, showed up at my sponsor's door. And we divided it up. In the Al-Anon literature I've read, it says we divided up in step 8. I did it in step 9. And so just like our previous speaker said, the very, very same thing. And you take all of these people, and what I did, and I made 3 columns on a couple of few pieces of paper. And okay, here are the things that are relatively easy to make the amends for. Here are the things that are a little harder. And then, there was the few that, I'm not going to do that. If you're hanging me over a pit of alligators, with a gun at my head, I'm not going to make that goddamn amend for that. No way. But like the total wisdom of our program, we take action against our thinking. We do the things we don't want to do. We get the results we never knew we wanted to get. We don't think our way into right action. We act our way into right thinking. And so I take the actions. And so I started to do those small ones. And it began really with that process of physically sitting down side by side with my sponsor, going through each person's name I had put down. And then the next column is, what did you do, Rick? Not what they did to you. Ignore it. Ignore it. What did you do? And then this is the amend you're going to make. And then we divided it. We divided it up into the columns. And I'm responsible. I wrote down this little quote about the region. I'm responsible for how I do it. But when we're in programs, sometimes we know people that do them to us. And I'm responsible then for how they're accepted. But when I'm doing an amend, their reaction is not my problem. Positive response is not necessary for the amend to be complete, but it is my responsibility to live the amend no matter what reception I receive. You talk about living amends. I think it can be a gigantic cop-out now. Well, I'm not going to make the direct amend. I'm just going to change my attitude and behavior. Well, just changing your attitude and behavior is a good thing. After I make the direct amend, I have to do the amend face to face, and then I need to live the change behavior of love, kindness, care, compassion that I want to, that's what I want to be with all these people. I need to not just then do the same thing again. I need to have that beautiful moment of recovery. That we make the amend. We're with somebody. I can feel it kind of like I'll blast them, like happened with my sister. Blast at her again, and there's that beautiful moment of recovery that happens. I asked a guy like this one time. I said, "You're in AA for 20 years. What has 20 years given you?" And he stopped, and he said, "A couple of seconds." So what do you mean a couple of seconds? He said, "A couple of seconds between what I want to do and what God wants me to do. And I bring God in." And that's what happened. There's the living amend. I can feel that, you feel it building up. We all know that feeling. It's building, it's growing, it's bubbling. Bring God in. That's what I need to do. So let's tell you some stories in the time. I got like 10 minutes left. So I'll just tell you a few of these stories. So on my easy list, what was stuff that I stole. So for my profession, I was a teacher. I taught music, high school band director, head of a performing arts department. I used my music room as my personal music store. I used the supply room in the school as my own business business depot, where if I needed anything, I just went and took it. And so that was kind of right on the top of my easy list. And so the amend was simple. Don't just replace what you took. Replace it, like double it or triple it. Because that's when you make a monetary one. How can I make that up to you with interest? And so I went to a Staples and filled up a cart with all of the things that I had taken and simply put them back in the storeroom. And I had that feeling again, just like at amend I made to the store. There it is. See, what I'm doing now is I'm building an experience to go to the next one. And so the next one was a lawyer. So I had a lawyer do a job for me. I was taking out a secured line of credit on the home that I owned. The lawyer did the job. I got the line of credit, and then I got the lawyer's bill, to which I said, "That's too much money," and I didn't pay the bill. And they never came after me for the bill. I got away with it, doing my 8 step, doing my 9 step. The lawyer. So my sponsor said, "What did you do?" I told her what I just told you. And she said, "Okay, this is what you need to do. You need to call the lawyer and tell them who you are So you have this bill owing from all those years ago, and then say this. Now, how much do I owe you with interest accrued, compounded over the length of time I've owed you that money? I went, what? He said, that's what you're going to do. Are you willing to go to any length, Rick? Or are you going to stop when it gets tough? I don't need money. I'm divorced. I'm a single guy. Are you willing to go to any length? Yes, I am. Okay. So I remember the work again where I did this one. I was sitting in my office at school. Everybody had left. I got on the phone. It was near Easter. I phoned. The receptionist answered. I introduced myself, and she said, "I remember you." I go, "Oh my God." So I said, "I had this. You did this work for me all these years ago. I wonder if you could tell me, how much." And she said, "Hold on, I'll go get that bill." And she went and she found it, and she comes back and she said, "Well, yes, here it is, and here's the amount." And then I say it. I said, "And how much do I owe you with interest accrued on that amount, compounded for the length of time I've owed you that money?" And then she says, "What, are you Catholic or something? It's Easter time. Are you just trying to do your penance?" I said, "Well," I said, "something like that." And so, and then there was this pause. And I'm praying, "Okay, God." And she says, "You know what?" He said, "Just pay the face amount and we're good." And I said, "Done." I hung up. I wrote that check before I left the school. I put it into the mailbox that we had at school, walked out of there, and the feeling happened again. Freedom. That's what we're after. When I free, I can truly be an instrument for God's power. I can truly carry a message, not speak a message. I can carry a message. I can be a message when I start to get that freedom. Another one, this one was super embarrassing. A dear friend and my longest friend in the world, we know each other 55, 56. I mean, it's so long. He can remember. It's like maybe like 58 years. But he's also been, I introduced him to Al-Anon when, 55 years ago. So he's still in the program. Jen, you know what I'm talking about. Others do too. And so his name is Ken, lovely guy, still a great friend to this very, very, very day. He was over visiting me at my home one time. And he had a lovely white coat. It's kind of a windbreaker coat. I liked it. And, he spent the visit, left, and at 5 minutes, I see that. And I didn't tell him he left the coat. I kept the coat. And I wore the coat around him. I'm doing my list. I said, "Oh my God, I got to make this." And so we were at a conference up in Aurelia, Jen. And so I say to Ken, "Look, man, I took the coat. I did this. What can I do to make that up to you?" And he said, "Well, there's a gift store over there. Maybe we can go get something else." I said, "Done." So we went in and we bought this beautiful kind of sweater that said Geneva Park. And then done. Had that great feeling. 2 months ago, Ken comes up to visit. He's wearing this sweater that we bought. It was so old and tattered that he had it repaired, but he said, "I will never get rid of it." The stuff that comes back to us, the amends I've made to my father, the amends I've made to my mother, the amends I've been to 3 alcoholic women. I'll just talk about that one. I phoned up to alcoholic number 3, and she was in AA. She had made her amend to me. We split up. I called her, said, "Hey, can I come?" I made an appointment. Come down and see her. That's what we do. These things are filmable. You can like hold up your iPhone. You can see somebody doing the event. This is concrete, specific, visible action. These aren't just talking points. This is action that we take. And this one was on that third column. Never am I going to. There was a massive age difference in a little bit of time we have. I was 34, she was 20, and then we were together for like 8-10 years. I got what I wanted for a long time. She never got what she wanted. How do you make an amend for using somebody like that? But I did do that. many other things. So I showed up at the appointed time. It was on a Saturday morning, and hadn't seen her for a while. Sat on the couch one side, she sat on the other. And I said to her, I said, I'm going to have to bring up some stuff. Are you okay with this? And she said, yes, I am. And so I went through my list, and there was a number of things I'd done to put her life into danger with my driving and other things I'd never uttered to another soul, actually. And we were both crying. And then God reached in and said to me, nobody had ever told me to do this, and my sponsor had never said this. I said to her after I got through my list, took about half an hour. I said, is there anything else I've left off? Such was my will. Such was my willingness to do this. And she said, well, as a matter of fact, there is. So she had her list. And so she went through that, and there was many more tears. And I acknowledged the reality of every one of those things. And then I said it. I said, what can I ever do to make up to you the wrong I have done to you? You did not deserve how I used you. And she thought, and she said, well, number one, the very fact that you've acknowledged the reality of the things I had on my list is gigantic. And number two, she said, the very fact that you're willing to sit here at all and bring up those other things is all that I needed. I just wanted the acknowledgement. And we were like, it was like cathartic, snot flinging, crying going. And then I left, and it was the experience of the store and all of those other things on steroids. It was beyond, and I have never looked back from that experience. The power of going to any length to face those things and really got a gun at my head, pull the trigger, because I'd rather have that happen than do this. So I'm out of time. Thanks again for inviting me, and I just want to say that and started to end my talk this way, that because all of this leads to the spiritual awakening, but then step 12 is a promise, an action, and a kind of a challenge. And the action we take, the instruction to action, is to carry the message. So I pray each and every day to carry that message to the very best of my ability, and to use words only when necessary. God bless you all.